For joining us, everybody, for our February PHMAS monthly meeting. Tonight, we have a really great presentation. Tomas O'Leary, who you can see on your screen here, is joining us from Ireland to give a presentation on a training program and a training center program they've been able to implement there, and some really great lessons for us to take away here. Before I turn it over to him, I'm going to welcome our board president, Hank Keating, to do a better introduction. So Hank, take the floor.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, I met Thomas last June in Ireland attending the Enniscorthy Forum. And at that time, got the privilege of touring the Mount Lucas National Construction Training Campus. And I came away from that tour realizing that we need Massachusetts to seriously think about studying this model and perhaps emulating it. So I prevailed upon Thomas to see whether he would be willing to do a presentation like this. And I want to recap for everybody what we know, but it's so important. The state of Massachusetts is facing a serious challenge. By 2030, we are supposed to be decarbonizing 500,000 units, 300 million square feet of commercial space, and that does not take into account the number of units that are going to be generated by the opt-in specialized code requiring passive house. So quick back of the envelope indicates that between now and 2030, we will probably have somewhere between 20 and 30,000 units of passive house being built, not necessarily completed, but being built. Being built if what? If we have the workforce required to do this work. This is why I'm hoping that this evening will advance serious planning amongst all the attendees tonight to start thinking about how the state can raise to the challenge of providing the kind of training that Thomas is going to show us tonight. So with that, I'll say thank you, Thomas, for taking the time and effort to put this presentation together for us. Take it away.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Hank. Should be seeing my screen now, hopefully. Is that right?
Yeah, we're seeing your screen.
Yeah, great. So kick it off here. So listen, very nice to be here. I see Ken and some other friends in the audience, so really nice to see you all. And I'm going to take you on a pretty rapid tour of what we've been doing in Ireland. So Tomas O'Leary is my name. You may know our US sister company, Passive House Academy. I'm here today under our brand Mossart and really talking about workforce development. So we've been in business for about 32 years. We've been doing Passive House for 20 years. We've a lot of really cool stuff going on. About 5 million square feet of projects on the books at any one time, certified passive house projects. And I did a quick thought last night. So we've over 5,000 residential units just in our office, consulting, certifying, designing. We do a lot of commercial projects as well. And we have a really talented team of both designers and certifiers. And we've trained, I mean, I've lost count really the amount of people we've trained across the world. A lot in North America, and working closely with the Passive House Network on that. So tonight is really about our education wing, but we do a lot of architecture and consulting and certification as well. My own personal story started here. I'm actually talking to you from this lovely home here. Some of you have visited me here in Ireland, and it's been very nice to have you here. So that's where our journey started. So our first project is 20 years old this year. And we've gone basically from that to some quite large projects. You'll all know the Cornell project, which we worked with Lois and a lot of other talented people. And now we're doing some really enormous projects. We have this 48-story project under construction in London, and lots and lots of other big stuff as well. I mean, the scale, the passive house scale, I was just getting really eye-watering, I would say. So I wanted to show you two very quick examples of contractor training we've been doing. One for this university building. So this was the largest passive house premium education building in the world. It's in Northern Ireland. And we did some contractor training. I can just show you here. So, you know, air tightness is obviously a big focus because we want people to appreciate the importance of air tightness and vapor control. So we started off with some very simple desktop models. And none of these people had ever done air tightness or vapor control before. And I'm imagining what they're saying, and they're kind of saying, "Oh shit! Like how are we going to be able to pull this off? You know, we're doomed. We'll never do this." But we got there, and you know, we got around 0.3 something air changes per hour, which is a pretty nice achievement given the contractor had never done passive house before. And I had the great privilege of presenting the plaque to the First Minister of Northern Ireland, Arlene Foster. So that's kind of one story. Then we did another, I mean, we've done loads of these. This is from a small apartment building in Dublin. You can see before and after here. And again, we would have trained contractors on site. And we use, again, a combination of desktop models and, you know, talks and so forth. And a really good result again of around 0.58, I think it was, which is not bad for a retrofit. And you can see the pride in these people's faces. And, you know, this is just such exciting work to do, but it does have its limitations. You know, you can't be going to every construction site and delivering passive house tradesperson training on site. That's quite difficult to do from an insurance point of view, logistics point of view, weather point of view, even comfort point of view. I mean, here we're doing it in the kitchen. This is in the canteen, the site canteen, and you know, it's just basically not ideal. So, and that's me presenting the plaque to the clerk of works. He's basically the construction supervisor for that project. So they were kind of early days stuff, but as I say, it does have its limitations. So we started to think, right, well, how can we scale this up? And I was explaining to Hank, you know, there are two major, the top two priorities for the Irish government right now is housing provision and climate change. And we have a housing crisis, and rather I reluctantly have to tell you, we have quite a few homeless people in Ireland, people living in sheltered housing. And we've really got to address that. But to address that, we're going to need like a very, very significantly expanded and skilled workforce. So this is this is literally the #1 priority of the Irish government, and I think you'll be quite impressed what they've done in response to that. We have a retrofit plan that we need to deliver, and the numbers are just eye-watering. I want you to remember that the population of Ireland is 5 million people, okay? There are less people living in Ireland than there is in the state of Massachusetts. And, you know, we've 500,000 of this and 400,000 of that. And, you know, the numbers are just extraordinary. But the government is throwing a lot of money at this, about 8 billion. You might be interested in the little map here. So every home in Ireland has to have an energy rating, an energy label. And the top is an A rated and the worst is a G rated. And you can see here, while Ireland might be regarded as a green country, in fact, we're kind of orange and red and purple. So we're not doing terribly well. So basically, we really got my mission, and I'm playing a teeny tiny part of this, is to try and help everybody to turn Ireland truly green in terms of kind of energy performance. So that's really our mission. Now, what about some numbers? So we've done a lot of research on this, and the Irish government has done a lot of research. We need 120,000 new entrant skilled workers to add to the 164,000 workers already. So we practically have to double the workforce in construction. And that's no mean feat to do that, because the Irish mammy thinks construction is in a hole with a shovel and it's lashing rain and just kind of very unpleasant. And then we have a lot of VOTEC. Hank tells me VOTEC is the term to use there. So there's about 26,000 students taking construction VOTEC studies. And so what was our strategy? The strategy basically was to develop very ambitious training programs. And the idea was to go big or go home. Like, we either do this big scale or we just forget about it. We wanted to get people really excited about construction and to shock them into realizing that actually construction now is it's It's full of new technologies, new methods, new materials. And also we need to increase productivity. We've got to basically get more houses and more retrofits out of a smaller workforce. So that's going to take a bit of magic as well. So that was the overarching strategy. Hank said it might be interesting for some of you. Some of you might be from government departments. You see two languages here, so we'll just read the English for tonight. But basically, the government department funding all of this is further higher education, research, and innovation. They fund the authority, which is called Solas. Solas is Gaelic for light or enlightenment. And then Solas then distributes money to 16 education training boards around Ireland. Now, this is very important because I understand in the state of Massachusetts that there are various training organizations. And I think they don't really work in concert, not often. They don't have a lot of opportunity to collaborate. They sometimes are, well, they're generally in competition with each other. So there's a very good news story about that as well. We've basically managed to kind of get some of them to kind of work in harness together. So that gives you a sense of how it works from, let's say, from a government structure point of view. So this is Minister Simon Harris. He's very highly regarded. I've met him a few times. Irish politicians are very accessible. Again, we have a very small population here. It's very easy to meet these ministers, and he is the Minister for Higher Further Education. And he basically made an announcement in 2020 to set up 6 centres of excellence, okay? And you can see where they're located there. All the training is fully funded. That's really important for you to know. All of this training is completely free, okay? So it doesn't cost you a dime to take up the training. And the training is being delivered in incredible centres, which I'm going to give you a tour of in a moment. And we've got good coverage. There's lots and lots of new courses. All the courses are brand new. And what I want you to know as well is building science and passive house is baked into each and every one of these courses. So whether you're doing a 1-day short introduction course or you're doing a 10-day retrofit course, you know, if you know what you're looking for, you can see the passive house learning objectives right throughout that. So Hank was interested in finding out, well, look, how did this come about? I mean, what was the story here? So our little company, Mossart, we organized a national conference in 2017 on nearly zero energy buildings and NZEB. And one of the ETBs, one of the 16 ETBs was at that conference. It was as simple as that. And they said, right, let's get going. So basically the first training center was developed in 2018, a second one in 2020, and these proved to be very popular. In fact, I mean, people couldn't believe that this kind of training was available, but they were too spread out. But basically, based on the popularity of those training programs, the government put out a call, Hank, for 4 other centres, right? Basically, there was a realization that we need about 6 of these centres in Ireland. So basically, they put a call out to the ETBs to say, look, who's up for this? And so there's 2 now which are operational. I visited one of these today, actually. I live here, by the way, just where my mouse is. So this is where I am right now, but I went all the way over to there today, and more about that later. And then there's 2 other centres which will open in 2024. So it's all free. It's state of the art, amazing programs, and really, really accessible. And I come back to those messages again later on. So it was quite interesting. We expected basically, you know, just contractors, honestly, to take the training, right? But look what happened. We were getting a lot of the general public, because I mean, we all live in houses and we all want to improve our houses. So we get a fair amount of just ordinary Joes off the street coming to take the training. We get a lot of architects, designers, and specifiers. And now we're actually rolling out the training to the VOTEC schools. So basically, if you're studying to be an electrician, a carpenter, a plasterer, a bricklayer, whichever, and we have bespoke training programs for each of those trades, you can do a course and get an accreditation in high performance buildings. The 5th point there is very important. There's a lot of people leaving construction because they're broken, they're tired, and they're just beaten up because, you know, in the past, bricklaying and so forth was very hard labor. And we want to retain those people, so we want to basically try and stop the brain drain. And lastly, then, we have an issue, and I know you have it in the States as well. kids nowadays in school, they don't want to do manual labor. They want to be influencers and make a gazillion, on YouTube or whatever. And we know very few of them are going to kind of be successful in that regard. And the career guidance counselors are not pushing people towards trades. They're pushing kids towards law or social science, and all of those things are very important as well. But we need to actually change the prejudice. There's a prejudice, I believe, towards taking up a trade in construction. So we have a very aggressive program now to inspire and excite kids, and I'll come back to that later as well. So there's a suite of courses. I mean, there's just too many courses to go through. And you can sort of see them here: bricklayers, electricians, retrofit, new build, roof insulation. Just some stuff is very, very complex. Some stuff is quite basic. But we developed, and I was very proud to be involved in this, we actually developed a national skills specification for each of these courses. And that involved assembling a national panel of experts. We had academics, we had people from the unions, we had people from industry, we had contractors, designers, architects, and I basically was the lead author for these skills specifications. It took about 6 months to develop them. We met once a month. So basically all of the courses, all of the learning outcomes are endorsed by a national panel. And some of you will look at this and you'll say, oh, surely that's the Passive House Designer course. But see this section here now, every single course, the short courses, the long courses, they all start off with building physics, because we want people to not just know how to do something, but why to do it in a certain way. Why do we get mold? How does condensation form? All of these kind of things, because we need to change the culture. The reason we have to retrofit 500,000 houses in Ireland was because basically they weren't done right the first time round, and we don't want to make a mistake the second time round. So those of you who are into passive will look down through that, and that's just one page out of like lots and lots of pages of learning outcomes. So there was a lot of fun pulling that together, and these are all publicly available. I'm very happy to share these through Hank and Aaron through if it's interesting. Obviously, you'll want to localize it to your own territory, your own climate, your own building stock, but I mean, physics is physics. So let's have a little. Welcome to the National Construction Training Center. Let me just see here now. Just move something out of the way here. I should be able to play a little video here. Welcome to the National Construction Training Centre in Mount Lucas, in the heartland of the Midlands of Ireland. We want to give you a short tour of the training opportunities that we have here. When you come in, you first of all get to see all the principles, the key principles of any high performance building, whether it's new build or retrofit. And this really is the Ladin's Cave of training facilities for NZEB and for retrofit. We've got lots of examples of heat pumps. We've got rigs here which can teach you the principles of air tightness and vapor control. You're dealing with window penetrations, service penetrations, attic hatches, sealing up all of those things. We've lots of exemplary wall sections as well. We've taken the cover off some heat pumps, so that's all very exciting. We have lots of ventilation bays here where you can learn the good principles of ventilation, lots of different ventilation systems, heat recovery ventilation, CMEV, MVHR, all sort of options you can ever imagine. And then we've got how to ventilate existing buildings as well, because you may not want to put a mechanical system, a centralized mechanical system. You may want to have a natural ventilation system. So again, you can experience all of these things here in the National Construction Training Centre. Yeah, so that's one small part of one of the 6 training centres. Now, we've done a lot of research as well to find out, well, what do the contractors need in terms of the skilled workforce? And this bunch of really good looking people here are the basically the largest retrofit contractors in the country. This was again during COVID, so we're all kind of a bit separated here in terms of social distancing. And it might be during one of the times where we could get together. But basically what we did was we brought them all to one of the training centres and we asked them, what skills do you want? And they basically told us that external wall insulation, there's a massive skills gap there. How to insulate roofs properly. Again, you might be sitting there thinking, you know, how difficult can it be to insulate a roof? Well, it's actually not difficult to do it correctly, but it's very, very easy to do it wrong. And mostly it's done wrong. and then ventilation systems and so forth. So we developed training programs, bespoke, accredited, hands-on training programs for basically pretty much all of these. And I want to show you one of them, the external wall insulation. So again, this is during COVID. We actually built a house inside in the training center, a full-scale house, if you will. And you can see these guys. This was the very first cohort that ever delivered to this training. And colleagues of mine in Mossart delivered the training. I think I have a little video here for you. So these guys had never done this before. So this is a masonry house, a block house, if you will, and they work it in pairs. And by the end of the day, they had that little house fully insulated, and they were blown away. They just could not believe how easy it was, you know, how transformative it was. And we're teaching them all the building science. So before they ever get near this house, they've learned about the physics of heat flow, thermal bridging, to use special wall ties and all of that kind of stuff. So really, really good program. So that's kind of gone down very, very well. I remember this couple here. So these are obviously big burly builders, right? But we do have members of the public coming in as well. And we have smaller rigs for this. And I want to tell you about this couple here because I'm sure they were in their 70s, maybe even in their 80s, right? And it's amazing. They came along and we're teaching them here about external wall insulation. We have this little rig where they connect the external wall insulation with the roof insulation. Now they haven't insulated the roof yet, but I just tapped this, and the pride they had in fitting this. Now they'll put the roof insulation here in a minute, and we have these all pre-cut, but we're trying to break the mold here. And what we mean by break the mold is the reason we've so much mold in houses is because of this pinch point of insulation between the wall and the roof. And if you can get rid of the pinch point, I'll just shut up for a second now. You see how proud this guy is. Look, ta-da! Oh my God, I just remember that such fondness. And these people were going to retrofit their house, and they didn't basically want to be hoodwinked by the contractor, you know. And for them, that just put, I mean, I felt sorry for the contractor, whoever wins that project, right? Because they're going to be saying, what are you doing at my eaves, you know? So it's so rewarding to do that, and it's accessible for everybody. Now, I was here today, guys. This is one of the latest centers to open up, and look at that for slickness. We had some training. We had some colleges over from the UK today. I was telling Hank, and I took them on a bit of a tour. And at the end of this place here, they said this is an art gallery for contractors. And it's just absolutely amazing. But what I want you to know is in the background there, they're mixing the cement, they're putting the insulation boards, they're pumping insulation, they're cutting membranes, they're doing full scale stuff, but the place just looks so slick, not sick. And you can see beautiful classroom. You see all of these peel back here. We've got limestone, we've got sandstone, we've got brick heritage buildings, how to insulate them internally. That's a big, big problem. And I'm sure it's a problem in Boston as well. If you don't insulate buildings internally correctly, you're going to create more problems than you ever started out with. And this classroom has an MVHR. It's probably the freshest, airiest, healthiest classroom on the island of Ireland. So like you're in the classroom learning the theory before you go out and do the practice, and you're just surrounded by this material. And if I'm talking about something, we'll walk over and actually, you know, literally, you know, show it. And it's such fun to deliver there. So just keeping going here. So I said we need to get more out of fewer people. And so in Ireland now, there's a policy called MMC, Modern Methods of Construction. And I think you'll be quite impressed to see where we're going with this. So this is typically, historically, how we built a house. You know, imagine if you built a car, you order a car, a Volkswagen Beetle, and some guy turns up with 6,000 bits and just dumps them in the front yard, and that ain't ever going to work. So this is our 90-minute passive house. It's a certified passive house home for a single family. We assemble it in 90 minutes. It comes with all the external finishes, you know, stucco, windows, air tightness. Obviously it has to be finished internally, but we can do that on the construction side. We don't need to take up valuable factory time for that. And this requires a whole skill set in craneage, transportation, bolting these things together. I love this. Just have a look at this, guys. This is not a photograph. This is a video of the roof being popped on. The insulation is in it. There's a walkway for the water tank. The photovoltaic panels are on it. The slates are on it. And this was, again, a study funded by the Northern Ireland government. It was assembled in 90 minutes. We did an air tightness test, and we got, I think, 0.4 or something like that. And we need to train an army of people to deliver on that as well. So some projects we're doing in the UK, in London. This is a really interesting project here, and you see I'm Irish by my green shoes there. And so this project is nearly finished now. It's a student dormitory in Battersea in London. And you can see, I'm sure you're doing similar projects in Massachusetts. So we're the passive house designers on this, or you would say passive house consultants. And, you know, the wall sections on this are just absolutely incredible. They have these ceramic terracotta tiles on the end of these. This is, you know, all this offsite construction, but all of these people, so whether you're doing stick frame or modern methods of construction, you've got to train up everybody to do their job and make sure that they're bolted together. These go in so tight together, by the way, they have to be lubricated. They literally have to spray the rubbers with oil so they can actually get them to integrate and just fit in nicely. Now, something that Hank is very interested in is what I'm going to show you now. You know, to get construction workers off the building site is a bit of an impediment to training. You know, they might lose a day's wages, they might have to travel to the training center. So we came up with another idea, and I've always wanted to do this, right? And it's been a dream of mine to do this since forever. I've been in education for 30 years, and we finally actually managed to pull it off. So I hope you like this. So I want to show you, this is a special training center, which I'm just going to show you here. So we've got on the left, we've got air tightness and vapor control. In the middle, we've got external wall insulation. On the right, we've got an MVHR, mechanical ventilation system with heat recovery. And again, you can see what we're doing here. We're showing all the ideas and so forth, and it's really practical and hands-on. But the joke here is that this is actually taking place in a truck. And so this is basically a mobile training unit that we came up with and we designed. And it's probably one of my career highlights, sort of managing to pull this off. And this, you would not believe how popular this thing is. This is booked out until September. I mean, it would be easier to see the Pope than to get this to pull up to your school. And the kids are loving it. And also now we're using it in construction sites, and it's just absolutely amazing. It's solar powered, so no power, no problem. It's got a little photovoltaic system on the roof. And it's really surprising when you actually, this is one of my colleagues, one of our staff here.
And to achieve the heat recovery, they change direction every 70 seconds. So there's 70 seconds worth of warm air going through, heating the porcelain. 70 seconds later, the air direction changes. And so you're now getting fresh air into your house 24/7. And you're getting, they claim, up to 80% heat recovery.
That's Terry, one of my South African colleagues. But the point I want to make about this, guys, is so Terry is delivering that in the very, very northwestern tip of Ireland. So the next city to here is probably Boston or Iceland, Reykjavik, or somewhere like this. It's very, very isolated. They feel very detached from all of the training and upskilling. And that's not a problem. We just bring the training center to them, and they feel so delighted, they feel so included, and they feel just kind of excited to be kind of part of the story, you know. And we're also experimenting with virtual reality. Now, initially, I was quite cynical about this, but again, we've developed some really good courses on VR, and it's surprisingly good. It really is. And again, the younger people love that. So I won't dwell too much on it because it doesn't, you know, portray very well in this little video here. But it's absolutely, you know, it's incredibly. The kids love it especially, and we want to get kids excited about construction. So what's the impact of this training? So I started my presentation talking about air tightness because, you know, you can buy windows, you can buy ventilation equipment, you can buy a heat pump, but you can't buy air tightness. You know, air tightness is a product of good materials, good application, good testing, and all of that. So for me, the air tightness number of a building is kind of, it's like its cholesterol number, you know, it's like its heartbeat number. It's like, it's a key number. So, and we always talk about air tightness champions. So I want to show you now a guy. Now you might find it very difficult to understand his accent. He's from Belfast. He's a young guy, and so just be patient about that. But I want you to meet somebody who's passed through this training. And I think it's just to get a sense of what
this really tall, good-looking fella from Belfast. His name is Alex Caldwell, and Alex is an air tightness champion. What is an air tightness champion? He's the person who's responsible to go back around everybody here in the building site and make sure everything is stitched up and sealed up and taped up before we run the air tightness test. And if you're doing a large residential project like this, the bricklayer, the carpenter, the electrician, the plumbers, they're not really hardwired to think about air tightness and vapor control. They've got their own normal job to do. And Alex, it's your job to go around and look after these guys. And it's, we know we talk about air tightness champions, but here you have one in the flesh. So fair crack to you. You're doing a great job here, Alex. Fair play to you. Well done. Great stuff. Yeah. Cool.
Hi, my name is Alex Caldwell, and I'm the air tightness champion for Fraser Miller. And the role is to check anything to do with any of the air tightness. Today we're running a test. So my job today is to go around and just make sure that everything has been taped up correctly where the membrane has been pierced. At the window, it's got to make sure it goes right into the corner to allow the insulation afterwards to not pierce the membrane. So you've got to make sure that the membrane's in very, very tight to the window and the tape's pressed in with no creases. Okay, so this is where we have pumped the insulation. We've pumped bead insulation here, and all these patches are just the little small tears that we make to pump the insulation, and then they get patched up.
So I'm curious, hopefully you could understand my colleague there and that. So it's just really incredible to, again, it's very fulfilling for me as an educator to see these people. So maybe to start coming towards the finishing line, let's have a look and see how we've progressed. And I hope there's loads of questions, by the way. So from a standing start in 2018, there are 4 centers of excellence up and running already, looking really good and pumping out a lot of excited, enthusiastic and qualified people. We've a shed load of courses and developing new courses all the time. They're all accredited, so you get a digital credential which you can put on your Facebook page or your email signature. People can click on that digital credential and see what you've learned. About 5,000 people trained so far, which is not bad given that we've had COVID, the interruption of COVID. And my understanding is that there's a target of about 6,000 people to be trained up per year, which is really, really good. And something which is very exciting as well is we're getting a lot more females involved in taking up the training. We started at 1%, we're now at about 10% and growing. And in Mossart, we actually have female trainers. I shouldn't say actually, but you know, it's quite unusual to have female contractor trainers. And Emer is one of my colleagues there, and I know full well, you know, that she has actually inspired a lot of people, a lot of women to get involved in construction. So I think that's quite a good start. So just some ideas here. Again, we had colleagues over from the UK today, and I was quite shocked, to be honest, that in the UK they have to pay for training. And the reason I was shocked is, I mean, I shouldn't be shocked, you know, but I mean, that's such an impediment. Not only are you losing a day's wages, but then if you have to pay for the training, I mean, who's going to, you know, that's a real problem. So the Irish government just said, right, no, education is free, and generally education is free. I had 3 daughters in university here, and you'd be absolutely sick as a parrot if you found out how cheap it is to go to university here in Ireland, and even to the top universities. So all the education is fully funded. It's very convenient. You're never more than an hour and 15 minutes away from one of these centers of excellence. So it's accessible, which is really important. And it's got to be engaging. It's, you know, it's got to be new and of the moment, and it's got to be with all the latest materials, the technologies. You've got to excite people. You know, if you bring, and if you just try to teach somebody in a hotel with PowerPoint, you know, that ain't going to cut it. You really, and like the very gratifying thing is to see the light bulb moments. You know, even most hardened, cynical learner who comes into us, at the end of the day, they're absolutely buzzing about this. And they go home, the key message we're getting is like, I had no clue that this stuff was going on. I had no idea there was such amazing learning experience that was possible. So you've got to, these are for me the key ingredients. And obviously it's got to be real world relevant, you know. So it would need to be relevant to Boston and to Massachusetts and whatever challenges that you've got. It shouldn't be, you know, supplanted from some other continent or some other country or state. It's got to be relevant and addressing your challenges. And it's got to be science based. And I don't mean to have that last, but I mean, I presume we all get the joke here. It's got to be science based. A lot of people in construction have been doing things wrong, no disrespect intended, for much of their career. And that sounds a bit hard. Maybe that is a bit hard, but basically, you know, we've got moldy buildings, we've got drafty buildings, we've got buildings that with huge energy bills, high emissions, and all of that. And basically, so building science has got to be at the bedrock of it all, in my opinion. We have 6 training centres in Ireland. I did a bit of geographical research last night, Hank. So basically, Massachusetts is about 1/3 the size of Ireland, which I'm actually quite surprised at, to be honest. But you have a much higher population. So, I mean, I'm going out on a limb here. I would say, honestly, as a starting point, the state of Massachusetts should probably have 3 centers like we've got here. If you can wave a magic wand, that would be my suggestion. Again, not knowing the geography, that might be, it's definitely not too many. It may be, but it may be too few. You know, and I've no doubt, by the way, we're going to end up with more than 6 in Ireland. Remember, there are 16 ETBs, and the 10 that didn't get the centers of excellence, they're actually all starting their own little mini centers of excellence now, because they don't want to be kind of left behind. So, and remember, they were all in competition with each other. And nowadays, now the 6 centers are working in harmony. They all had to pitch for this. They all had to make a case, they had to make a business case why they should get that center. Why should we in Cork or Galway or wherever get this center? So it wasn't just kind of handed around willy-nilly. People had to pitch for this. So I suppose my parting words then, Hank, are as follows. This is a project now that we've got on site in Dublin. In Ireland, basically, we reckon we can't solve the housing crisis and the climate change crisis without a very, very ambitious upskilling program. So that concludes my presentation, Hank. Hopefully that was interesting. I'm hoping there might be some questions, and I'll stop sharing here and see what there might be is to talk about. Thank you.
Thank you. That was an incredible presentation. I really appreciate it. We are going to open it up to questions, to comments. Folks, use the chat room to ask questions. You can also use the raise hand feature of Zoom, and I can let you speak directly. Right now, I'm going to turn it over to Hank.
There, can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Thomas. I'm really interested in how you go about one of the challenges, which is that, as you said, we've evolved both in Ireland and in US to the idea that everybody has to go to college and become, as you said, an influencer. And we need to change that idea so that we have more and more young people who are interested in going into the trades. And you indicated that you're tackling that. What type of inspiration or programs are you using to try to get that message across?
Yeah, so you have to tap into what the kids are looking for, you know. I think the kids are being poorly advised by their career guidance counselors, because the career guidance counselors think construction is a shovel in a hole, right? That's the first thing. The other thing is a lot of people are not getting into construction because they're afraid of the boom bust cycle. You know, we had the crash in 08, everybody lost their jobs, so we basically have got to provide stability. So the Irish government has a 2030 and 2050 plan. So basically, if you get involved in construction, you'll have a career for life, essentially, which is important. And then, so that's really important. And then the other thing is, then, Hank, is just they don't know what they don't know. Like, in other words, you've got to get them excited. That's the truck really comes into play there. If you can bring the truck around to a school and get students onto it, and they see the tapes, the membranes, the grommets, the grills, the ventilation equipment, then they go home to their parents and say, I would love a career in construction. And the other thing, last but not least, Hank, is the inside joke is most construction workers earn more than professionals, and I'm sure it's the same in Massachusetts. Like your typical electrician in Ireland will earn more than an architect, right? So if you're an electrician maybe for 10 years, or 5 to 10 years or whatever, you're going to earn more than most architects. So if you want a good income, and then we can tap into the kind of climate change philosophy as well. You're not just building a building, you're not just retrofitting a home, you're tackling climate change abatement as well. It's going to take a culture shift. That could take, honestly, a decade, certainly 5 to 10 years, I think. But we are seeing evidence of that already. So yeah, a bit of a challenge, but we've got to take our first step on that journey.
Thank you. How about Jonathan?
Yes, hi. Thank you so much for that terrific presentation. I really appreciate it. My name's Jonathan Schrag from the Governor's Climate Office.
Hey, hi.
Nice to see you. Thank you for making time. So what you described was a terrific overview of the innovation you've done. That's great. We in Massachusetts have our own curriculums on our own workforce training programs. I think there are colleagues from the Executive Office of Education on the phone who can go into detail on some of those. And I think you highlighted that whether it's education or workforce, it's got to fit in with the local systems, the local unions, the local schools. So in terms of things we can borrow from you, what are like the 3 or 5 distinctive innovations that you think are your secret sauce?
Okay, thanks, Jonathan. Just a very quick comment. I can't comment on the state of the programs in the US, but in Ireland, we've had training programs for decades and they haven't been updated, right? And what we noticed actually is the VOTEC students, we call them apprentices here, but the VOTEC students are coming back into their tutors and they're embarrassing their tutors because they're saying, look, what you guys are teaching us is actually way out of date. Nobody does that anymore. So we basically have a situation where the VOTEC educators are actually behind the curveball in terms of knowing what knowledge is needed. Now, that's the situation in Ireland. You guys may be way more advanced in Massachusetts. So I would say, for example, the skills specifications that we developed, I think would be immediately applicable. And in writing those and specifying those, honestly, they're applicable whether you're building in Massachusetts or on the moon. Heat loss is heat loss, vapor is vapor, mold is mold. So they could be used straight away. We've designed, now my office, we've designed all 6 centers, and we've learned a lot in terms of rig design, what works, what doesn't work. For example, how do you train people on air tightness, on roof insulation, on all sorts of things like that. And every time we've done a new center, the designs, the rigs have improved. One practical thing, for example, Jonathan, when you're teaching people how to insulate buildings, the materials are very bulky. Where do you store those? Because you can't get students to use old materials, unfortunately. It sounds very wasteful, but we want everybody to have an experience like it would be on site. So then you strip down the rigs afterwards. What do you do with those materials? Can you recycle them? Can they be reused somewhere? So the whole kind of logistical storage kind of management of these training centers is something we could share. And then obviously we've got loads of PowerPoints and all of that kind of stuff. Oh yeah, the other thing we could share perhaps is the assessment. So everybody has to do an assessment in order to get an accreditation, and the assessments are both theory and practice, of course. And how do you examine somebody in air tightness application? So and that took quite a lot of thinking on our part. So like we have a 10-point checklist, no creases, no rounding of corners, and we can verbalize these things over beer in the pub, but it's another thing to actually put them on an exam paper. So essentially, there's probably oodles of stuff that we could share, which I think would be directly relevant. Sure. Thanks for your question.
Yeah, and there's lots of requests in the chat room for sharing of a lot of these details, learning objectives
Good.
and curriculum, all of the content.
Great.
And then I think there's been some questions for the slides as well, which I'm sure we can share. We also are
Absolutely,
recording this. The video should be available by the end of the week, so if you want that for reference. Hank, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Yeah, Thomas, you mentioned the one advantage of the mobile truck is to be able to bring it out to sites. But I'm interested in the response of the contractors who came up with a list of all the skills they needed. How open are they to giving their personnel time off to go to the intended and attend the classes?
If I'm honest, that's been a slow burner. But what happens is the innovative companies, the companies that are going green, the companies who are trying to innovate, they sort of get the joke that if they don't train up their workers, they're not going to be able to deliver on their objectives. So your traditional, building contractor who just does, let's say, bread and butter, kind of, let's say, ordinary stuff, they're not going to be hugely excited by this. So the early movers are going to be the innovators. And it's amazing, Hank, like if you can just get people to the center, they walk in the door and they just look around and you can see they're saying, wow, and then they go back and tell their colleagues. And then basically, so the best way to kind of sell this really is by word of mouth. And the Irish government at the moment, Hank, is actually considering, and this is amazing, they're considering at government level now of paying people a stipend to take a day off work to do training. So not only is the training free, but you would get a modest payment. Now, you wouldn't earn what you would earn, let's say, as a qualified electrician or carpenter or something like that, but it basically takes the sting out of it. It might cover your fuel and lunch and whatever, and maybe you'd have whatever, I won't mention an amount of money, but like what's happening, Hank, it's really very encouraging. We've just set up a passive house developer group in Ireland, and these are some of the top developers who build most of the houses, and they're going passive because what they're finding is if you just follow normal building code is not delivering the energy efficiencies that their customers want. So they're moving on from the building regulations. They're going passive, and they know if they go passive, they've got to take these expert courses. So it's slow. I don't kind of oversell this for what it is, but just get them there, get them excited, and then they'll sell it to their colleagues. So.
And what about with the breakdown between upskilling existing workers and catching younger kids in there before they start their construction career and getting them trained properly? Are they plugging into these same centers?
Yeah, we only have one truck at the moment, and the truck is based in the Midlands of Ireland. So the middle red star, if you will, and so I mean, so that's hugely popular. I think we're going to need sort of 4 or 5 more trucks. So the reason I'm talking about the trucks is the best way to get the kids is to bring the truck to the school, to the high school, get them onto the truck and get them excited. That takes a fair bit of legwork, and I was talking to the owners of that truck today, and they were saying it's booked out until September, October. It's harder to get schools to come to the training center. The training centers are not really set up for kids. There's bulky materials. There's maybe, I don't want to say trip hazards, but there's tools, there's knives, and I don't want to say a hostile environment, but it's one thing to bring adults to a training center. It's a different matter to bring teenagers, and how do you control them and watch them and so forth. So, I'm rambling a bit here. I'm not sure if I've answered your question or not, but I think and the breakdown, what's happening now is the number of kids that we're reaching is way passing the number of contractors. But that might seem we're doing a bad job with the contractors. The contractor number is increasing rapidly as well. but we can reach more people more quickly, if you like, with the training truck. I mean, you can go to a school and you can have 100 people through the truck in a day, you know. Yeah.
We'll go to Nick.
Great presentation, Tomas. Quick question.
Thanks.
So one of the things we've been looking at is we ran a program last year at one of the high schools where we sent out small pods to the high school. Like we put 3 small pods on a landscape trailer. Had you considered building more smaller units? You could have like a vapor model, an outsolation model, an ERV model. Have you considered more small ones that are more portable and cheaper to build?
Yeah, in fact, when COVID came, Nick, we were looking quite worried because people couldn't come to the training centers anymore, and we had to go online, and we pivoted and all of this kind of stuff. And we actually invented, would you believe, some flat pack models, which basically would be about the size of a pizza box, like a rather deep pizza box, if you will. And you could ship that out to people. And when you open it up, it was actually a desktop model. And it was something like 15 learning outcomes in that, various types of air tightness and that, you know, and we were playing around with that idea, and I was actually quite excited about it. And but then I suppose I got a little bit distracted and sort of moved on to something else. And it was heavy and expensive to ship and all of that. So I think you're exactly right. You know, these mini models are, I think, they have a lot of potential, and you can send them out to people, and they can kind of experiment with those. So yeah, I do believe in those greatly. The thing is, Nick, we feel it's really important to get people to the center. You need to think of these centers as like an exhibition center or an art gallery or a library. Like it's somewhere where people come in. They might only be over in one corner doing their thing for the day, but they're seeing this whole other world, and they're hearing the noises, and they're talking to people in the canteen. Or what are you doing? I'm doing air tightness. I'm doing ventilation. I'm doing window, whatever, heat pump servicing. And and if you can just get them there, I think, you know, if they do it remotely in their homes or in their workplaces, they're not really getting the sizzle. You know, we want to get them excited. So definitely love the idea of the mini models. We've used that for many years, and it's very, very successful. And there are no courses that don't have hands-on application. Every single course has hands-on. Sometimes it's mini models, and sometimes it's actually full scale. Thank you.
Keith?
Yes, thank you for this presentation, and I'm actually interested to visit Ireland and see one for myself.
Cool.
I have 2 questions. One really is about the big truck. Is what can you give us an idea of what that cost was to build it? And was there special engineering involved for the trailer? I see you had the extension bump outs of the trailer.
Yeah. I'm kind of rather embarrassed now because I can't remember the cost of the truck. I will find that out, and I'll let you know through Hank and Aaron. So I'm not avoiding that question. I'd be happy to share that. The bump outs were, I mean, they're not on every truck, obviously, right? So that was kind of a special edition, and there's a fair bit of work in sort of getting them to go out, if you will. And then we had to do a whole interior design. We have a photovoltaic system, so we needed inverters. And there's incredible amount of experiences you can have on that. It's almost designed like a yacht, like a yacht designer might. You know, you're trying to get. It's like designing an RV. You're trying to get the absolute maximum out of the limited space that you've got. It's got an interactive TV in it. We can accommodate 14 people there in a classroom setting. And then you put the chairs away, the foldable chairs go away, and you can pull out the rigs. I was in it again today for the first time for a while, and it's absolutely amazing when you walk onto this thing and say, like, freaking hell, this is a truck. It just, like, the scale of it, you can't appreciate it in the video or in the photographs. And just to link back to a question that Hank had earlier on, and following up on your question as well, we brought this truck recently to the biggest house builder in Ireland, They're a publicly listed company, you know, and they're very, very highly regarded. Like they're like the Guinness, if you will, in terms of brand, in terms of house building. They lost their mind when they saw the truck, and they're actually going to now develop, would you believe, their own truck. So this is a developer who says, "Thank you for this idea, love that. We're building like thousands and thousands of dwellings." They have 2,000 construction workers on one site. Think about that for a moment. There are towns in Ireland that don't have 2,000 people. So on one construction site, which is passive house construction site, they have 2,000 workers. So this concept, which I just threw out there over coffee, is sort of really taken off. But I will come back on the cost, and I'm sorry I don't have that number for you, but I will come back on that. Thanks for the. Oh, by the way, we would love to have you over. We organized a very famous tour, a tour of Brussels in 2015, which turned out to be quite a big deal. And I would love to have a North American tour of the training centers in Ireland. We put together a really good show for you guys. You can meet government ministers. You can meet the training center managers. You can have a go in the truck if you want. We can't let you drive it, unfortunately. But if anybody's interested, we're pretty good at these guided tours. And so if there's any interest in that, put your name in the chat.
I know you're going to have a lot of interest. I'm in, and we already have a few others in the chat saying they're in.
Yeah.
Great. On the question of cost, there was a question in the chat room. Just where is the general funding for all of this coming from? What's the bucket of funds being used?
I can tell you. Sorry, Keith. I annoyed I couldn't answer your question on the truck. I can tell you the average cost of a training center, Keith, is probably about $1 million, right? Which I know is a shed load of money, but you know, we're talking new classrooms, you know, new canteen, all the training rigs, the design, the fire regulations, blah blah blah, all of that kind of thing. They're basically generally going into sheds or existing warehousing that's not being used. So it's a lot of money, but you know, we have a housing crisis. We're not going to solve this without getting people excited and without, you know, and we've to double our workforce. You simply are not going to do that with the humdrum training facilities we have right now. So that's a number you can take away. So it's about, I know 2 projects we were directly involved in the design, and it was about 800,000 euros, which is about $1 million.
And then the
Thank
question of where all of this is coming from, what's the bucket of funding?
Oh, sorry. So the bucket is coming from our national development plan. And, you know, Ireland is doing very well at the moment. The economy is booming. We really have practically zero unemployment. You know, education has always been an important part of the culture. My kids go to university in the, you know, like education is practically free. Like it's a couple of $1,000s a year. Whether you're studying medicine or engineering or social science or whatever in the top schools here. Secondary school education is completely free. You know, so you just have to pay some small token when you're in university. And I know compared to what you guys have to pay there, that's just kind of a bit unfair. Grant. So we have a good education. You know, we're a small island isolated on the western side of Europe. You know, we've got to have an educated workforce. Otherwise, you know, we're not a sustainable, you know, population, you know.
We'll go to Ken.
Ken, yeah. How you going, Ken?
Hey, Tomas. Good to see you.
Great to see you.
So I was curious about the pipeline connection between, you know, who's getting trained and the contractors that are doing the passive house projects or the high performance, low energy building projects, because a lot of times we see contractors are getting the bids, winning the contracts, and they aren't necessarily giving their workers the proper training. And you have a lot of people getting trained who aren't necessarily ending up on those job sites. So is there an effort in terms of matching the workers, or do you see contractors like in the bid documents and the contract documents to say, hey, you've got to send your workers to this training center and get trained? Like, how do you feel that?
Absolutely. So a few things on that, Ken. So if I take the issue of ventilation, the government recognizes now that buildings are getting tighter because we're better sealing them up. So we've got to pay more attention to ventilation. And you cannot legally install, design, or commission a ventilation system now in Ireland unless you can prove competency. Like, it's a legal requirement, and it's one of the, apart from fire separation and all of that kind of thing, it's one of the few things that you have to legally prove competencies. So that's a government issued requirement. And then, Ken, on the contractors, like, they want to deliver passive house at the cheapest way possible. Like, they would argue over the price of a letterbox. Everything is drilled down to the last dime, right? Now, what they don't want to do is they don't want to pay for the learning curve, wasted materials, having to do air tightness tests over and over, having to reinstall windows because of poor installation and so forth. They get it, that if they get a little bit of training, they're going to be able to do it quicker and faster and better. And then on the bid documents, it definitely is the case. We know some county councils in Ireland that when they put out high performance projects, they specifically mention that in order to qualify to bid on the project, you have to undertake passive house training. So, like, you don't even get to submit a bid until you actually attend the training. And the reason they do that is to take the fear factor pricing out of it. If you've never done passive house and you're bidding on a passive house project, you're just going to add 15% because, sounds awkward and sounds difficult. But if you can get them into a training hall for a couple of days, demystify the whole thing, especially air tightness, because the rest is just kind of good practice, then you don't get the 15% fear factors. Then you get everybody eyeballing each other saying, shit, they're pricing it. God, I didn't realize they're bidding as well. We better sharpen our pencil here. So you're exactly right, Ken. And it's very, I've waited for this for 20 years. I mean, I've literally waited for this moment, but it's finally arrived here, where people see the value of training, to see the economic value of it, the business value of it. And we have a big conference in Dublin next week, and we're going to be announcing this passive house developer group. And, so yeah, it's very, very exciting, Ken. Thanks for your question, and great to see you.
You too. Thank you.
Yeah, lovely.
We have a question from Laura.
Hi, Laura.
Hi there. Thank you, Thomas, for taking my question. I think you just sort of answered it. I was really fascinated about the emphasis on retrofits, because it seems like that is something that a lot of people aren't willing to explore, given the knee-jerk reaction statement that it is too expensive. And a lot of architects want to start afresh. Of course, that's sort of a style issue and what you want to leave behind you. So I just wondered, what's your magic for how are you getting contractors and architects on board? Because I just find this really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of business opportunities. There's a lot of business opportunities for people who are kind of at the cutting edge now in terms of high performance, whether it's retrofit or new build. So the contractors and the architects are aligning themselves on that. I don't know if ESG is a thing now in the States, for, environmental social governance, but ESG is and reporting and avoiding greenwashing, carbon, accounting. This is all becoming a massive, massive issue here now in Ireland. And basically, if you're not genuinely going green, you're going out of business. And like all the retrofits, every single retrofit in Ireland is very heavily subsidized by the Irish government. If you're on low income, for example, the retrofit is completely free. The government will just pay for it. And if you're, it's actually incredible, the funding that's available there. So they're not, and even if you're a high earner, I think you can get something like 50% of the cost of a retrofit covered. Up to obviously a certain, you can't put in swimming pools and jacuzzis and stuff like that. It's all, deep retrofit stuff. And to be fair to the government, they've been sort of stoking this fire, for probably 5 or 6 years now, Laura. And I think the dinosaur contractors are now beginning to recognize, that their way of doing things is basically going out with the dodo. And they've got to get on board rapidly, and but we still have a long way to go. I mean, we still do things badly. There's still a lot of shoddy workmanship out there, and there's still a lot of art. I'm astounded, when I have a class of architects, I'm astounded sometimes the generally low level of building science knowledge that they might have about, the risks of retrofit, for example, especially. I mean, we've generally been doing retrofits wrong forever and creating all sorts of problems. So I don't create the wrong message here that we're all perfect and it's utopia, but the culture is changing and people are lining up, and I think a lot of it, I have to take my hat off to the Irish government. They're basically, the policies are there to support it, Thanks very much. Thanks, Ken. I'm blushing here.
Nick, do you have another question?
Yeah, these are great questions. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a lot of questions, but one more question for you, Thomas. So when you mentioned that the students are going back to the trade school teachers and the trade school teachers are sort of like behind, we've been looking at how do we shorten the feedback loop between the high performance building and the vocational schools. Have you looked at developing a train the trainers program for the vocational schools, or how are you trying to close that gap so that doesn't continue?
That's another thing we can share. So we have actually rolled out a train the trainer program, and it's very intense, and it's run over 6 months. There's a lot of assignments, and we've run, I think, 3 of those now. I contributed to those, so I can't take credit for those. That's been run by one of the universities, Technical University of the Shannon, and so there is a train the trainer program, Nick, and that's really, really important, because do you know how frustrated the trainers were? They actually got together and wrote a letter to the minister to say, we need help on this. The students are coming back in, they're showing us photographs of what they're doing on site. This is what's happening nowadays, and we, the trainers, don't have the rigs, we don't have the materials, we don't have the technology. And I don't know how it is in the States, Nick, but it's extremely slow to upgrade the curricula at trade schools. I don't know why that is. It's a huge frustration here, but the curricula have been there for I don't want to say decades, that might be a bit unkind. So all the curriculum are being revised now as well, to see basically to basically come up to date, essentially, so you're absolutely right. We're a small company, and we do lots of things like we need an army of trainers. And one thing on that, Nick, just to say, the trainers have to have real world experience. If they're only in a trade school and they don't get on construction sites and are brought around to show things, at first hand, then they can't share that experience to the students. So it's not just train the trainer, death by PowerPoint. It's got to be, visiting construction sites, large construction sites, and dealing with all the challenges that are out there, So again, I mean, there's so much stuff I haven't talked about tonight. We could have a whole evening session on the train the trainer program. But probably not for tonight.
I think we could have a whole session on a lot of these topics. One question I have for you is, you mentioned these are all accredited trainings, and people receive, a certificate or a designation they can put somewhere. I'm curious where that accreditation is coming from. Did you create an accreditation system? Did you use a pre-existing system to provide this?
No, so there is an Irish accreditation program for everything from hairdressing, to welding, to computer science, whatever you can imagine. And we have 10 different education levels in Ireland. Level 10 is PhD, and level 1 is kind of, kindergarten, right? And so every program is on a level. And so high school, when people leave high school, that's kind of, to give you an impression, that's kind of level 6. And then basic degree level 7, honors degree level 8, masters is level 9, and so on and so on. So all of these programs are aligned to a certain level, and it's part of our language here, our parlance. So if you haven't been fortunate and you haven't had, let's say, full high school education, we've got learning programs for you. If you're an architect or a qualified electrician or tradesperson, put me down for a trip to Ireland. I'm looking at the chat here. That's hilarious. We got to get a bigger bus. We need a bigger bus. So basically, you know, there's basically, depending on what level you're interested in, we've got something for you, you know. Ian Finlayson. I know an Ian Finlayson. I don't know if that's an Ian Finlayson in my town, or is that an Ian Finlayson, Massachusetts, or an Ian Finlayson where I live? I'm not sure. His name is attracting me there because I know an Ian Finlayson.
Probably the one here. He's been instrumental in the code development for Passive House.
Wonderful, Ian. We got to talk. Yeah. Great. Any other questions? Do we deal with Aer Lingus? A good friend of mine.
Comments in the chat. I'm not seeing too many other questions.
A good friend of mine is a captain with Aer Lingus. Maybe he could sort of, you know, hijack an air. Well, you know, we've got a training truck. Maybe we could have a training airplane, and we could do some desktop models on the way over. So I don't know if it's possible, Aaron, to collect the comments in the chat or whatever like that. I think it is possible. I would love to see them afterwards.
Yeah, they will be collected, so I can send them out.
I've tried not to be too distracted by that. Yeah, I'm loving the questions. Thanks. Anything else?
I would like to simply wrap up then with a thank you, Thomas, because this has been terrific.
Thank you.
And I really hope that people seriously think about taking up your offer to do tours of the facilities in Ireland. But I want to ask the entire group to think about how they, as a group of people who've seen this, are going to take the next steps in this conversation. I mean, we can all walk away from this and say, wow, Thomas is doing amazing things over in Ireland. How are we in this state going to make the moves to start doing these type of amazing things here? So I'm really hoping this is the beginning of a discussion involving all of you folks who've been on this call. Thank you for attending.
Let's do it, yeah. And I have one last thing to say. I want to say to everybody, happy Valentine's Day. Because of the time difference, I can tell you officially it's Valentine's Day where I am right now. And I've been up. I started a tour this morning with our British visitors. I left the house this morning at 5:30, so I'm almost 18 hours on the go now. But I've really enjoyed this evening, Hank. I was looking forward to it immensely, and this is such a cool thing to do, guys. We've got to do this, and maybe we can make mass. You know, maybe we could do a twinning. I mean, you know, basically half the people in Massachusetts are Irish anyway, as far as I can figure out. And so why not have a twinning, you know, a high performance passive house twinning between Ireland and Massachusetts? Let's just do it. Like,
That's
what's stopping
perfect.
you? Okay.
Thank you.
Best takeaway we could have. Thank you all for being here. We'll see you again. And Thomas, I hope you can get some sleep now.
Yeah. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Ken.